2 years ago today, on July 13th, 2016, there was a hotfix update for Dead Ops Arcade 2 which brought about quite a few significant changes to the game. If you played the game at the time, you couldn't help but notice some of these changes. However, there's some nitty-gritty details about this update that you probably never heard about before, since there were never any official patch notes released on Activision's website. Well, I guess I'm here to tell you all about it. This was pretty much the final update that targeted balance and issues and stuff like that. As the following month in August 2016, only a couple of small changes occurred, which were then followed by the leaderboards finally being reset. The July hotfix is definitely up there with the February 1st and March 21st updates, in terms of the impact it had on the overall gaming experience. So we'll start with some of the more obvious stuff that you probably already know of. If you're an impatient bastard, there's always timestamps in the description so you could jump around to different fixes, along with accurate English closed captions. So the Room of Judgment received some changes, as the second Room of Judgment after round 101 became the final one that you encountered in the game, and it would grant all remaining players in your game an upgrade for their fates, rather than having to wait until round 165 and 229 in order for the third and fourth players in your game to receive their upgrade. Speaking of upgrades and fates, some of these upgrades received some balanced tuning, most notably the Fortitude upgrade, which would default to a 2x score multiplier upon dying, rather than a 3x score multiplier. Also, weapons and most item pickups now lasted 1.75 times longer rather than 2 times longer. And the Fortune Fate also had its pickup duration changed from less than 1.5 times longer to now less than 1.35 times longer. Another significant change made to an upgrade was the Fury. This hotfix kinda broke the Fury, as mentioned in many of my other videos, as it made it to where the Fury death machine would never become weaker as the rounds progressed. Basically, it would only take 3 bullets to kill a zombie at any round. And you can imagine with the rate of fire on this gun, you were able to wipe out many zombies in a short period of time. This was somewhat quickly corrected, as a week later, on July 20th, another hotfix was introduced to tune the Fury and make it, well, not so strong. The final upgrade to receive a change was the Favor, which now awarded 2 to 6 chicken eggs at the end of a weapon cycle, with a guarantee of at least 1 golden egg, and a maximum of 4 golden eggs. Shortly thereafter, this was slightly changed, as the maximum number of golden eggs increased from 4 to 6. Okay, enough with the silly upgrades. One of the biggest issues with the UA2 for the first few months of its release was the AI targeting of players, their pathing, aggro, whatever the hell you want to call it. Zombies were often erratic and unpredictable in their movement, as they would flip on you without much rhyme or reason, and target players that weren't too close to them. On May 5th, 2016, there was a slight adjustment to the pathing of zombies, and with this July hotfix, the targeting of players by the AI was improved upon even more to more closely resemble DOA 1.
That's bizarre, okay?
Another significant issue with co-op was the crazy number of zombies that were on the map. With this hotfix, there was a dynamic formula implemented that would have the number of players in the game dictate the max number of zombies that could be spawned in at once. For instance, 4-player matches would have 6 fewer zombies spawned in at once, 3-player matches would have about 5 fewer zombies, and 2-player matches would have 3 fewer zombies. This was intended to make it easier for players in 3 or 4-player matches to run in a certain portion of the map without being too overwhelmed by zombie spawns. This was taken a step further for one specific arena, Coliseum, which had its max AI spawn decreased by a total of 3, regardless of how many players were in the game. This would overlap with the other player-based formula, so for example, if you were playing a 4-player match and you were on the Coliseum arena, there would be 9 fewer zombies that could be spawned in at one time, when compared to the max AI that existed on that arena during the previous few months. While cooperative play was encouraged, the hotfix also aimed at inhibiting strategies that involved playing without a teammate present and taking lives. The cooldown period for a teammate to take your life after dying had been decreased from 3 minutes to 1 minute, so that the player's lives could be drained at a faster rate, and if their teammates keep dying and the player wasn't skilled enough to hold a score multiplier for an extended period of time, they wouldn't be able to earn their lives back at the same rate that they were being taken. Following this hotfix, I witnessed several talented players game over on arenas that they would normally get through, such as Cows, Shadow Boogie, Coliseum, etc. And over the course of 11 months, no one was able to get past round 227 on Chinatown either. Though at the same time, the 1-minute cooldown also made a certain aspect of the game unintentionally easier. A 1-minute cooldown meant you were also receiving more life rewards. And while many of the life rewards were nerfed, which I'll get to briefly, it was still possible to receive equipment while inside a vehicle. And if you had the Fortitude upgrade, it's quite easy to load up on equipment, given that vehicles spawn in rather commonly, and also last for a relatively long duration. For instance, the Raps vehicle lasted 70 seconds with the Fortitude, and the cooldown was only 60 seconds. And when you're in a vehicle, you're guaranteed either 3 nukes or 4 speed boosts. And I think this might have been an oversight in the application of this update, insofar as the amount of equipment you receive outside of a vehicle is only 2 nukes or 3 speed boosts, and I think this was not carried over in the coding for when you're inside a vehicle, but I could be mistaken. Even if this was intentionally kept, I think the inverse would have made a lot more sense. For example, you should get 3 nukes or 4 speed boosts when you're not in a vehicle. vehicle, since there's only a small chance you get those life rewards. But when you're in a vehicle, there's a 100% chance you get those life rewards. So it only follows that the rewards should be nerfed for that a bit, and you should only get 2 nukes or 3 speed boosts. Perhaps, ideally, it should have only been 2 nukes or 3 speed boosts regardless of whether you're in a vehicle or not. But the way it ended up is a little bit backwards in my opinion. It sort of reminds me of the rewards at the top of the hill on Meatball Soup. It should either be a wraps and 2 nukes, or no wraps and 3 nukes, rather than a wraps and 3 nukes or just 2 nukes. When there are only 2 possible outcomes in a game, there needs to be a balance rather than a jackpot system. Ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't get any more esoteric than this. Going back to the life donation rewards, the Vortex, Extra Life, and Tank were removed from the possible rewards. The Monkey Bombs and Chickens, 2 items that were rewards for the first couple months of the game's cycle, were added back into the mix. It's funny how that works. They get removed because co-op is too difficult, then they get added back because co-op becomes a bit too easy. It's also important to consider that the player base also became a lot more skilled over the course of the game's life cycle, so that's another factor you need to take into account. As alluded to before, the amount of nukes that you could receive as a reward decreased from 3 to 2, but only when you're not in a vehicle. The spawn rate of the ray gun was also slightly decreased. In hindsight, having a weapon that doesn't lose strength doesn't have much place in a DOA game in my opinion. Or at the very least, the game could have benefited from making the upgraded ray gun a more rare item, but at the same time luck becomes a strong variable as a result. But there are so many ways of upgrading a ray gun or any weapon for that matter. Some of these methods of upgrading your gun include grabbing the same weapon, skulls popping off of dead zombies, skulls popping off of dead teammates, skulls popping out of chicken eggs that either spawn on the map randomly from the Fido vehicle, in a chicken farm bonus room, or at the end of the favorite weapon cycle. Then there's also another bonus room which has 3 ray guns in it, skulls from the hidden mine bonus room, Vortex item pickup, max ammo item pickups which are quite common, umbrella pickups which are also common, and you could even get an umbrella as a possible life donation reward on co-op. And then you have longer max ammo and weapon durations with the Fortune/Fortitude, and running around without shooting isn't too difficult with all sorts of item pickups and invincibility shields upon using equipment to protect you. Moral of the story, there's a lot of ways to keep your ray gun intact for a long duration. In my most recent solo game, I held onto the same ray gun for 30 consecutive minutes on rounds 210 and 211, which is a pretty difficult arena. And I've also held onto a ray gun for well over an hour on some of the earlier arenas as well. Finally, the number of maximum pulls on the Chinatown arena increased by 4, as there was an update a bit earlier which made it to where the arena had very few pulls.
This Vortex is a trap, and all of us know it. Song Prophecy saying, grab it. It's a trap, Rainbow, grab it. Okay, analyzing the situation. Oh my